Like a trusted turnout jacket you've had for years, Flex 7 outer shell fabric delivers a perfectly broken-in feel on the very first wear. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of Enforce technology, Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tenkatafabrics.com/flex7. Flex 7, powered by Enforce technology, only from Tenkata Protective Fabrics.
Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Over time, those toxins lead to cancer. Protect yourself with MagnaGrip, the easiest, most reliable exhaust removal system that features a true 100% seal to eliminate diesel exhaust fumes. To get free grant assistance, visit magnagrip.com.
Greetings and welcome to the Women in Fire radio show. Today we're going to be talking about pregnancy, maternity policies, and paternity policies, or the lack thereof. Thank you to Fire Engineering for allowing Women in Fire to be part of their radio show. I am Lisa Baker, the Southwest Region Trustee for Women in Fire. I have an excellent group of panel members today. I have Erin Lamb, who's from South Metro Colorado Fire Department, Amber, who's from Berkeley, California Fire. Morgan is from Pierce County, Washington. And then I have Maia Earle, who is also from Washington, and the Beltane has an organization called Beltane, and she will go into detail about what that is about. So planning for a pregnancy in the fire department should start long before an agency has a pregnant firefighter. Yet today in 2014, many, if not most agencies have no formal policy in place. Departments need to anticipate what a pregnant firefighter needs. There's a lot of information available, a lot more than 4 years ago. Each state, there's federal and state laws that need to be put into play when policies are written. And firefighter pregnancy should be prepared for just as departments prepare for high-risk situations like hazmats and everyday situations. So we will start with, and whoever wants to answer, just go right ahead. So do any departments have a paid or unpaid pregnancy or maternity policy? If so, when was it implemented and how and why was it implemented?
I'll start if that's okay. This is Erin with South Metro Fire. We do have paid policies. We have both a maternity leave policy and we have a parental leave policy. Those were approved in 2021. The maternity leave we have is 24 weeks for a line pregnant member of paid leave. That's different leave from her sick and vacation. And then we have 6 weeks paid leave, parental leave, and that's for any other parent situation, if you will. And that those fall in line with the FMLA laws, so they run at the same time. Then we do also have time, a little bit less important to the rest of our listeners here, but we do have 12 weeks paid maternity leave for our administrative staff as well. And so a lot of this really came from, we had a women's group starting in 2019, and this was one of the hot topics. We had a list of a few priorities that the women in the department had outlined for us. And so this was one of the main ones that we took to our executive team. And surprisingly, it went a lot better than we expected. In addition, we actually were just going to ask for the maternity leave, but they had asked if we had a policy in place for the parental leave. And so at that point, they were in a great spot and open and willing to approve both of those.
So you said it's different than FMLA. So they're not using their vacation or sick leave or anything. This is strictly they're getting their regular salary as if they were fine.
That's right. So FMLA, right? That's the national laws that we abide by. They're running together simultaneously, but this leave comes from its own bank, if you will. And so a person still has their vacation and their sick leave, and it's separate and untouched when they take the maternity or parental leave. There's some small details in that, and we can go into it if it's important, but you're not necessarily accruing vacation during that time, but you're still accruing your normal pay. You maintain your benefits, you maintain your seniority. It still, you're protected under FMLA with all those same things. You're just now being paid for that time. We also provide modified or light duty options for maternity or for pregnant firefighters. And that is when they decide it's best for them. We don't put any stipulations. We don't feel like that's prudent to, tell somebody else when they should go on modified duty. That's up to that pregnant person and their doctor to decide that. Some women go off at 12 weeks, some wait until 25 weeks. But the department ensures that they have a job for them lined up until the point that they deliver.
Our policy is actually really similar to yours, which is interesting coming from Washington State. We in Washington State have this program called PFML, and it's sort of linked to FMLA, but it's paid family medical leave, and it's through the state actually. So similarly, our leave during maternity leave and everything doesn't come out of our banks. It doesn't come out of any accrued bank that we've earned. All of that stays intact, and our pay and everything comes from the state, and it's up to a certain percentage. I think I'm on maternity leave right now, and I think I'm earning about 90% of my normal salary through the state, and then my sick leave is used to basically make me whole. And that only, I guess the biggest difference is the length of time. Ours through PFML and our department's policy, we get 12 weeks of maternity leave and then 6 weeks of baby bonding time. So like my maternity leave, I took my baby bonding time right next to my maternity leave, and so I have a total of 18 weeks off, but you can elect to take that 6 weeks somewhere else within the first year of the baby being born. And then it's basically the same deal for paternity leave or paternal leave in Washington State. It's all paid for by PFML, and then they can take 6 weeks of paternity leave, and then 6 weeks of baby bonding time.
And does that cover all departments of all sizes in the state?
Yeah.
I know in Colorado, we have some similar state laws that are going into effect. And it's almost like insurance, right? Your department, my guess, pays into it a little bit every year. So ours will start to do that, but it's only for businesses or departments over a certain size.
That's a good question. Maia, do you know if PFML covers smaller departments? Our department's not very big. We only have 33 members or 33 firefighters. Oh, okay. And it covers us. I think that it covers all employees, but I could be mistaken.
I don't know the answer, unfortunately, but I was under the impression it was for all people employed in Washington State.
That's great.
If there was a minimum, my guess would be it would be 25. 25 seems to be their like classic number for minimums when it comes to state law, but that's just a guess.
So me, Amber, from Berkeley, currently we have what's called parental leave, and we technically don't have any paid maternity or paternity leave. We use FMLA guidelines that allows us, the way it's worded for us is that we're allowed one continuous year of leave from the time the child is born up until 18 months after leave. But what you're doing is you're using your own vacation sick leave, bonus sick leave, whatever personal PTO you have in your bank. And when you use parental sick leave, all that's doing is basically a trump card, because you'll have a certain amount of people that are allowed on vacation per tour, per shift. And no matter what the day, holiday, what it is, you can use your parental sick leave up to that 13-month or up to that year. So what we were looking to do is find a way to start, we're in the infancy stages basically of trying to start a parental leave policy, and mainly that maternity postpartum period, trying to find paid leave opportunities there. So what I did was I found that there was a lack of those policies regionally, I mean, pretty much everywhere actually, but finding like Erin's and Morgan's, finding your policies and understanding what the Beltane Guild does has been helpful. And what I started to notice when I started to speak with women who were associated with Women in Fire, or I was just meeting in different classes, I started to ask them what theirs was, what they had, and found that a lot of these women were in the same situation of trying to start something, but not really understanding where to start or having common resources or common data. And like Lisa mentioned before, that there is a lack of data because we only made up so much of the population and then realized, oh, hey, we need to actually study this. So we ended up just sort of networking with several different departments in the area and just started to create a forum, which ended up bringing me here with Lisa and all of you. So,
And I think in California, because the majority of fire departments in California don't pay into the state disability tax.
and we aren't eligible for the
We're not
short-term
eligible.
disability.
Yeah, they're not eligible for the covered
So,
paternity
right. So when
policy.
women, I'm sorry. Right. So when women get pregnant and they start to need that time off, the average person is going to apply for disability, get X percentage of their wages. But for us, since we pay into our specific retirement system, we don't pay into that Social Security system. We're not eligible for that leave. But as long as we fall in the FMLA guidelines, and the way we fall into that is providing that up to a year of unpaid leave, you can exhaust all your leave banks and you're still protected for up to a year. So you don't lose seniority, you don't stop accruing, you have medical coverage continuously. None of that ever stops for up to a year. So you can take that time, but it won't necessarily make up for any type of financial hardship or stress that it may cause trying to organize multiple trades for multiple months, and then having to worry about coming back, paying that back, or just having no leave. And even if you had complications, it'd be pretty expensive. So,
and I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. I think even some upper level executives in the fire department, that FMLA is that they're getting leave through FMLA, but that's not paid leave. That's your own leave you're using. You're using your own sick leave, your own vacation. So there's this disconnect I've seen, like even talking to other females about it when I was still there. They're like, well, I get, 6 or 8 weeks, even the guys that were taking off for birth bonding. I'm like, I'm getting paid sick. I'm like, you're not, that's your own time you're using. You're using your sick or your vacation, whichever one you have the most hours in is where it's coming from. And so what I know the departments are trying to do, and Amber's trying to do it with the a lot of the East Bay, like she was talking about, is get an actual, like Mia and Erin and Morgan was talking about, the pay leave where it's not coming from your own bank. Like if you talk to somebody that works for a corporation or I don't know, they're getting paid leave like Morgan is. It's not coming. They're getting like state disability almost. It's not coming from their own bank of time. So like Amber just said, people use their own time and then they run out of their time. So then they try to apply for like maybe long-term, if they have long-term disability insurance that you're you're still paying for that monthly too. So I think there's a big disconnect of what FMLA does with pregnancy, in my opinion. I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
I would agree with that. And I think that in Washington, we've even made it more convoluted now with the PFML program, which is separate from the FMLA program. But a lot of times you'll hear people say PFMLA like it's one thing, and it's not. And another thing that you kind of touched on that was interesting to me, and a little bit of something that I just experienced, and a little bit of a struggle. But since PFML is relatively still new in Washington State, there's a lot of departments that are not updating their policies, maybe to accommodate that quite as quickly as they should be. So like my fiance and I, we're not married, but we have 2 children. And something that we went through with this pregnancy is that his department so he was allowed to take FMLA, and he received PFML for the time that he was off after we had our baby. But they did ask him to take vacation time to supplement the PFML rather than sick leave, because their department's policy says that sick leave can only be used for a spouse. And since we're not married, so he had to sort of like supplement it with vacation time rather than sick leave, which was just like crazy because he was at home taking care of us.
This is Maya Brown from the Beltane Guild. Also wanted to add that something that can happen is you might be advised in Washington State again, but you might be advised by your Human Resources Department that you have to take PFML, the state leave, and FMLA concurrently, which to some might be what they want, but it is not necessarily true that they have to be taken at the same time. That would only allow you 3 months of leave. You can take the paid family medical leave, the state leave first, and then say you're going to take your FMLA and start burning through your sick and vacation time to at least allow yourself more than 3 months to recover from childbirth. And so it's unfortunate what I hear about from different departments is people being incorrectly advised and subsequently coming back to work. I mean, the real issue here is firefighters that have given birth to babies are coming back to shift work so fast without giving their bodies time to recover, without the proper bonding time with their children. It's you could potentially come back to a modified duty, but that creates its own stress for a family if you're not used to someone working a 9 to 5 and suddenly they're gone 5 days a week during those hours. But so yeah, that's one of my biggest concerns is the lack of just so many stories of departments not understanding the laws and not following the laws even when they are made aware of them, and putting these pregnant firefighters and postpartum firefighters in really stressful and not ideal conditions physically and emotionally.
And you just made a good point. I lost my train of thought. But like, I remember when I was, God, I'd been in the fire department, I don't know, 12 years. And someone from the class right after I came in, maybe 2-3 years, got pregnant. And right away, they're like, you have to go on light duty. So they were, forcing people, okay, you got to go on light duty. And that was 2000, probably early 2000s, if not the late 1990, 98, 99. And it's now now we're just saying, okay, you don't have to go on light duty now. But what is that? Almost 24 years. And we really haven't come that far, where departments are probably still, if they go and tell somebody I'm pregnant, okay, you have to go on light duty.
Well, that's actually because of the Pregnancy Workers Protection Act that took effect last year. That's against federal law. So that shouldn't be happening anymore.
Exactly. But it's just so funny that, we're still talking, like 20 years later, we're still like saying that what shouldn't happen. And it's like, I would think that, I think we could all admit there's still departments that don't have any females. So those departments should be really proactive in trying to get before that. We shouldn't be reactive in this. Every department should have something in place where it's proactive. Like if someone comes and says, I'm pregnant, they have like a policy or a binder or something where they could reference it and start like working with the female. Okay, what's best for you? What's best for your baby? What's best for your family? And it's still not occurring, I don't think, from the little bit of research I did and talking to some individuals and such, it's still not occurring. And and you're right, there's the Fair Pregnancy Act, was last June, I think, happened.
Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, and it just got adopted by EEOC. So, it's a bit bigger of a deal now. If a department doesn't know the laws or chooses not to follow them, you have the EEOC come and, supporting you at this point, which is great. But you're right. I from the perspective of my nonprofit that's all about firefighter reproductive health, I talk to people all the time that their stories are just so frustrating. The biggest one is that I hear over and over and over again is firefighter gets pregnant, firefighter, maybe most of the time they go on modified duty when they and their doctor choose to, so they've got that part figured out. But then they get assigned with writing a pregnancy policy or a reproductive health policy, and it's too late at that point. It's not going to help them or serve them in their own pregnancy, because we all know how long it takes for things to get pushed through administration. And then by the time they do all their homework, hopefully they find the Beltane Guild website and find some samples on there so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. But then they present it to administration and HR and they reject it because they don't want to put these things down on paper, even though it's the law. And so you've got just this, perpetual waste of time and refusal from departments to just adopt and do the right thing and get these policies in place. And you're right. You said 20 years that we're still like dealing with the same issues. I put a post on social media asking people like, who's got the best reproductive health policy out there? Who's got paid parental leave policy in place and fertility treatment benefits? Like, who's got the trifecta? And one woman said that she submitted her reproductive health proposal for her department before her daughter was born. She said her daughter's like 25 years old and it still hasn't been adopted. I had someone else tell me that they were told they couldn't go on modified duty, so they worked till they were 31 weeks pregnant because they didn't know they had any other options, even though with that Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, that would be completely against the law. And I had another woman that was on modified duty and by her doctor told she needed to go on bed rest, and the department refused her a remote work assignment, which also is a completely reasonable accommodation and also falls under that Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. And so it's just over and over and over again, we're just getting slammed by lack of understanding of the laws, not having policies in place. And I can't wait. I feel like the time is now. I feel like change is coming. I feel like things are going to start to move in the right direction, but it's conversations like these that just have to keep happening.
And I feel like when I get a lot of the questions in drafting these policies, I like them because we're all paramedics, we're all somewhat EMS medical professionals, and to help negate and also understand the difference between the maternity, postpartum, the baby bonding, you can really focus in on the why we need these things. And like you said, you study reproductive health for firefighters in general. So there is science and data for men and women, things we both know that are detrimental to our ability to reproduce, cancer, etc. But also understanding the physiological, the psychological, the physical changes in that really critical postpartum period as to why we should really be pushing for these policies just to help sustain the health and the morale and well-being of our firefighters in general.
And
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that one really hits home for me because I just learned one of the current studies that is ongoing at this time is finding that exposure to the toxins in the workforce of the fire service are not necessarily isolated to those that are going on a lot of structure fires. It's the markers are coming up in people that also do primarily medical response. So it's really more environmental factors and probably our uniforms and sleep and exhaust and other things versus just structure fire toxins that is affecting our reproductive health. And this especially hits home for me because my first pregnancy in the fire service, I was on modified duty from the very, very beginning, when I was going through fertility treatment, IVF. And then my second pregnancy, we conceived naturally, which was a wonderful surprise. But I thought to myself, oh, I'm a paramedic, firefighter medic, so I'm not going to go into a lot of structure fires. I'll just work until I don't feel comfortable doing so anymore. And so I worked till I was 5 months pregnant. And, you know, firefighter offspring are at higher risk of birth defects and other issues, preterm birth, low birth weight. And I didn't even make ironically, with all the things I'm involved with in reproductive health, I didn't make the connection until just a little while ago, just like a few months ago. My son was born with the one that was conceived naturally, where I carried him on the line for 5 months. He was born with both atrial septal defect and ventricle septal defect, which is a heart defect that nobody else in my family has. And if it doesn't close up on its own, he's going to have surgery by the time he's like 5 or 6 years old. And it's just one of those things where you're like, we are talking about literally the life, like the health and wellness of ourselves and our children. And we need to be so much smarter and proactive about this. Like, it's not just a nice to have thing. This is a need to have thing. My son has a heart defect, and it could have been because I chose to continue working. And not to tangent on that too long, I'll just make one final comment. Talking to other women that are pregnant in the fire service, you know, when I hear about the reasons why people decided to go off shift work, I think a lot of us can agree we didn't really choose it. Like, we didn't make the decision for the right reasons, right? Somebody was cutting a hole on the roof in a structure fire and said, you know what, I'm 6 months pregnant, maybe it's not a good idea that I'm up here, right? And mine was an excited, like someone who was having a not excited delirium, but whatever we're supposed to call it. And they were potentially dangerous. And that was my moment where I was thinking, you know, this isn't a good idea. And those should not be the moments where we are deciding to go off the line, right? We should be a little bit more thoughtful and a little bit more proactive. I support anyone in their personal decision, but every time I hear these stories, including my own, you know, we can just be doing so much better. And nobody's kid needs to be getting sick because we're working. Like, that's just something that is no longer.
If you just
go ahead.
The facts, the data that like your nonprofit has, if you state the facts, like your child's at a higher risk for birth defect, you'll have trouble with psychological issues because of everything that we already go through. And we know, like, you're more at risk for postpartum depression, higher increased risk for suicide. These are all known facts, right? And if you told somebody that the mother of your child is going to have contaminated breast milk for X amount of hours afterwards, where she won't be able to feed and she'll have to waste her milk, how would you feel? So if you start with these facts, like, they're just scientific facts of why we need this extra time or to be protected next to our male counterparts. And not to say that they don't deserve that parental leave, because there are also extensive studies showing the importance of baby bonding on the male side. But we can address that and address these as two separate issues and give them the equal attention that they need.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm all for paid parental leave for all firefighters, but we need to take care of our pregnant firefighters and their offspring, like, so much more than we're doing right now.
Amber, you just made a good point about the next question I was going to ask is, what do we need to educate our administrative staff about, right? Meaning deputy chiefs, assistant chiefs, fire chiefs, when we're trying to get these policies. I mean, there's pushback that how much is it going to cost me? I mean, how much is this going to cost? You know, how many female? I mean, the fire service now is, I think, what, 9% female, and that includes volunteer firefighters. So if you go with paid firefighters, I'm going to go maybe 4.5 to 4%. Yeah, 4%. So we're talking about paid firefighters across the whole United States, 4% of the. So you want to know how many? And some departments, as we mentioned, don't have females yet. So the first question shouldn't be, how much is this going to cost me? If it should be, how is this going to help my female firefighters have productive children and be productive in their career. I mean, if you are working somewhere, and I think a lot of my neighbor had a job and quit because what the things they were making her do when she was pregnant. It was like there was no positivity what she was doing. It's like, well, go do. She's like, well, I'm supposed to get, this, and this with the Fairness Act. And so she finally just said, I'm done. I don't have time for this. This is too stressful coming to work. So if we're putting female firefighters, you say I'm pregnant now, and they put you on a light duty job that isn't really doing anything. I mean, and maybe writing a policy, as someone mentioned earlier, right here, right, you're pregnant now, write this policy for us. But it's something that's really not productive. It's just they're going to find you a spot because I have to find you a spot kind of thing, right? It's the law. You want to go on light duty, let me go find you something to do. And by nature, firefighters want to be busy. They want to be active. They want to be making a difference, right? So if you're just sitting there like filing papers or something, right there, that's not going to be like, oh, this is something I want to come do every day. So that's adding stress probably already to a pregnancy where they know now once they need to go off, they're going to be burning their own vacation or sick time. So it's like, how do we educate? I think, Amber, you made the point, like come with data, but in the long run, like, the amount of money it cost is going to save them money.
So what I did was I used the Beltane Guild a lot, actually, because there's a ton of resources on there, and Maia's linked like a ton of research and everything into firefighter reproductive health. So I literally just printed out a lot of those articles, did some Googling, found some other research that sort of supported the same ideas, which is basically all of it. And then I made a binder with my proposed policy and then all of those resources underneath. And then at the end, I included like all of the legal stuff. So in Washington State, what the laws are with PFML, and then like what the federal laws are. And then when we presented it, I went in with my union e-board, just handed the binder to the chiefs, sort of walked them through what it was. And that was it. Like, then they could just look at it. I put infographics in there so they could like really easily see the data. And then they were able to just sort of say like, oh, okay, well, we didn't know that it was all of this, that, how important all of this was. So there was really like no argument to be made at that point. It still took like 4 months for it to get signed into effect, but 4 months is a lot better than, 25 years.
Quick, actually. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, I think we have to get past, and I want to keep harping on this, but past the fact of how much it's going to cost. I mean, we know, especially in certain areas in California, the budgets are really out of alignment and such. And so, and it is a chief's job. I understand that to, make sure the budget is in line and stuff. But at some point, we have to quit thinking budget and think about our employees. Because
well, you can also
go ahead.
I was sorry, pardon me. I'm a great example for a lot of these questions that you're asking because I've been there. If you are thinking about the bottom line or the budget, if you are having your pregnant or postpartum firefighters come back to shift work too soon because they ran out of sick leave and vacation leave and you didn't offer any paid parental leave, well, you run the risk of them getting hurt because our job is physically demanding. And, it wasn't a year after I got back to work that I threw my back out. I herniated my L5S1 and had to go back on modified duty and get back surgery. So, you might be thinking like, what's this going to cost me? But what's it going to cost you not to have the policy? Additionally, women are looking at departments' policies before they apply. It's not the same fire service it was back when I was trying to get hired. There's jobs available across the board, and women are looking to see which ones are going to take care of them and their families. So if you have a department that doesn't provide these benefits, you're going to have trouble with diversity because the women are going to go elsewhere. So like, it's funny because they think and not only that, but not having a policy, you are so at risk of someone inadvertently sticking their foot in their mouth, like, requiring something that's illegal. Like, one department I know of still has in their policy, it is mandatory that you report that you're pregnant the second that that you can't do that. Like, you literally can't do that. It's against the law. So, you might be thinking you're saving yourself money by not implementing these policies, but I look at the money that you'd be losing by not having it.
I
Yeah.
think that that was one of the things that was most impactful when I did my presentation to our chief, is that there was one study I found that showed how having a maternity leave policy impacted retention at a fire department.
Mhm.
So that was like a really good point that he hadn't really considered before.
Recruitment and
say-
retention tool.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Erin, sorry.
For us, that was one of the things the topics we discussed with our maternity leave was that with recruitment and retention, that this policy was an absolute must. And to the point now, for the last several years, I would definitely say it is a recruiting tool for us because nobody else simply can offer this. But I also did talk to our deputy chief of operations and our chief human resources person about the numbers, because I wasn't sure if people wanted to know that. It's obviously going to be a little bit different everywhere. So I'm happy to dive into some of that, because at the end of the day, for a lot of people, they are going to be money driven. So I'm happy to talk about that if you think that would be good, Lisa.
I think it would be, because I'm still hearing like the drawback, and some of it is, well, how much is it going to cost?
Absolutely. Yeah, so how we're organized is a little bit of background. We're a fire protection district, so we're not attached to any one city. We protect, I believe it's 9 municipalities, and so we're on the southern Denver border area. So we cover cities like Littleton, Parker, Centennial. So we have a board of directors, and that's the only people, so to speak, that we report to. So our money is based off of property tax and mills. There's also some other fees and stuff that come into it. But so we're working from, we have our own budget. We're not competing with other city entities for it. So coming into this conversation, I realize in that way, it's probably an advantage when it comes to making money decisions. You're not fighting with other city departments. So how it works is we have just a leave pot, if you will. And so we have all, sick, vacation, and we have bereavement leave, and then we have our parental and maternity leave. So when they ran, I asked them what the numbers were, and they already had this stuff figured out. They do put all leave together. And so leave is considered a liability. That's what they call it in that world. And so they just have their set numbers, right? But specifically for our parental and our maternity leave, since we've had it from 2021, our range is 350,000 to 480,000 a year. That's with so we run about 40 people a year use the benefit, and the vast majority, actually it's all men, except for we've only had one female firefighter use it, and we have one that will be using it here shortly. And our department is 30 stations, so we run about 200 people online a day, just to give you guys like the size comparison, how that works for your departments. So yeah, we're running, well, we have 2 to 220. Anyway, we're about 700 line people, 700 to 800, depending on where we're at with academies and retirements. But we're under $500,000 a year for this benefit. And so our chief, he talked me through how he figures that rate out. He kind of did a general average of what he thought. And then again, he just puts it in the pile and he leaves it. Like, they don't, if it's 40 people one year, if it's 50 people, if it's 30, it doesn't matter. They're going to cover it. But for quick numbers, he just said, if you have 7, usually men, but 7 people off at any given time, 3 per shift, but that they're taking off 6 weeks. And for us, that's 15 shifts off. And so 7 times 15, and then you multiply that by, how many hours and their hourly rate. And that's how they came up with how much about they need to budget for it. But they, put probably a little bit extra in that leave pile to cover that. But we're always under $500,000 so far.
Erin, I actually wrote down a question in regards to that, because you said you had the 24 weeks, and I thought that's awesome. And did you all at any point get any pushback from the members themselves for, say, like a year ago, we had 7 guys whose wives, 6 or 7 guys whose wives all had kids. So if you had around this in the same year, and a few in the same time frame. So if you had that happen and it taxes a department, we're about 140 people, right? And say 2 or 3 of those guys are on the same shift, and the backfill that causes if they were to have that paid leave. Did you guys receive any pushback from that amount of time in that backfill and the cost it would be, or no?
We didn't, and I think some of it, especially when we first implemented it, you don't know what you don't know at first. And so navigating how much backfill and how much, you know, I can't remember the exact phrase, but basically for every, 3 line people you have another half position or a half person to account for sick, vacation, and then now also parental leave. So to some extent, it's built into our budget because we build in more additional full-time employees to cover that leave. I think we had a rare occasion of a person, like a line person, pushing back about, like, why do the ladies get so much time? And it was very, very rare and very isolated. And everyone that I know of, it was managed pretty quickly by their officer. So we didn't get any pushback from that. The other thing I will say was the first time we took this up, I had asked the union, and the union was pretty hands off, and they asked that their perspective was that this should be a benefit that the department offers. This should never be a negotiated benefit. This isn't something, never be a, hey, if when we go to renew our contract, we'll give you back, 6 weeks of our maternity leave so we can get a 2% raise. They never wanted it to be attached to a contract or to be something to be negotiated. So they were pretty insistent on us just simply taking it to the E-team and getting it approved that way as well.
Those are 2 awesome points, is because one, I didn't realize, well, like you said, you don't know what you don't know. Working here, and then I started to have those conversations with other women, that even though we don't have the policy, we have different variations and we do have different perks. But we all, like, we here, like, I have a very supportive union, and I have a very supportive command staff, and our overall feeling is, like you said, they have that understanding. And some people, you have to explain that physiological why women need this, but that part was important, having that union understanding and that backing, and people wanting to progress and take care of their members. I lost my train of thought.
So you briefly want I think 2 of you hit on the fact of recruitment and retention. So I think it would help with men also, because someone mentioned the fire services and what it used to be. And I mean, I know when I first came in, you'd never see people leave fire departments to go somewhere else. You went to a department and you pretty much stayed there for 30 years and that was it. And now you see people jumping around a lot. And I don't know if it has to do with more departments now are doing lateral academies or what, but I would think it would help with recruiting men as well, knowing that there's a policy for them to be able to bond with their baby, not using their own time as well.
It's interesting, when we took this policy forward, I can't necessarily speak to the recruitment piece, but one of the reasons why I think it was so well received was that part of our E-team in there, they all had children. And you have to remember the power, right, of story. And that's where it's really great with the social media that you guys were talking about earlier about these stories. And so we were able to get the chiefs, the top 5 or whatever, they could remember back to when they had their kids. And not even long ago, even some men are still this way. Oh, my wife is pregnant. She's having a baby. Maybe I'll take a set off. Right. And so that's what they did. And so the members on our E-team at that time, especially one of them, I think he was the operations chief at the time, had said, because I only took a set off, he's like, I believe that, we had struggles in our marriage for a year following that, because I didn't take the time off that I needed to be there with her. And then we had another chief echo that sentiment. And so it was a really powerful meeting for us, because there was some vulnerability there, but because of how we presented it and we were able to share these stories, they could see that vulnerability in themselves and see where the importance is of that, which is really different than when I have a new recruit that comes to my station and we have these conversations, and the younger men are just kind of, they just see things differently, and they're just kind of shocked that this isn't, that what we have now wasn't normal. So, you know, we're living in a world of two extremes of men that wouldn't even take a set off versus men that think that taking time off is just normal and that's what everybody does, right? And so I think it's a good sign of where we're going.
And it's awesome to see them so excited to be involved in the process and the birth and everything afterwards, and really bonding not just with their baby, but with their wife at a really critical and important time, especially for, like, we all I think know a few, but just like you, Morgan, who are a dual firefighter household, right? So it's a
Yeah,
pretty
it's
unique
it's been,
situation.
I mean, yeah, we definitely face some unique challenges at home, both doing shift work, and like our schedules are completely different. So I typically work a 48-96 and he does like a 4 platoon schedule. And so I think somebody was brought up earlier, like going on to light duty, how that can kind of cause more stress. And that was definitely the case for me because I was used to going to work for 2 days and then being at home with our older daughter and being able to rest, and then having to go. I live an hour away from where I work, so going on light duty now, I'm, having to get up every morning super early, drive an hour to work, do paperwork or whatever, get off shift, and then come back home, and it takes an hour to get home, and I'm picking up my daughter late from daycare, and it definitely, like, being on light duty created way more stress than I was experiencing just doing my normal shift.
So we've kind of touched on the effects that pregnancy has on women and such. Someone mentioned the breast milk and such and pumping. And I think on your page, Mia, about the Beltane, you have stuff about how it affects men, that firefighting affects men reproductive systems as well. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think when we start talking about pregnancy and paternity policies and stuff, some men just think that doesn't affect me because the studies are, I mean, they're not familiar, or some people might not be familiar with the studies that have been done on men reproductive health as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Just off the top of my head, I know that one of the older studies around talks about how they found that male firefighters were at higher risk of infertility compared to the general population. Their offspring also are at higher risk of birth defects and having other issues. So yeah, it's not isolated to women at all. And, specifically when it comes to heat, sperm really don't like heat. And so if you go on a structure fire, you are working really hard during suppression or overhaul, and your sperm are mutating. They grow like 2 heads, 2 tails. They start spinning around in circles. Like, they get all crazy, and it takes them about a month to regenerate. My co-board member, Dr. Brittany Hollerbach, could definitely speak to this a lot more, but that's just like the brief overview. Is it definitely affects male reproductive health. The good news for men is that, and we've even suggested this in the Beltane Guild's gold standard policy, is if men are having trouble conceiving with their spouses, whether their spouse is a firefighter or not, considering requesting a modified duty assignment for a month, or maybe up to 3 months, just to see if you can get their sperm and their body kind of normalized and back on a normal sleep routine, and reduce of stress, reduce of heat, and all the exposures to the toxins. That might be enough to do it, right? And I don't think, you go back to the money, I don't think that's really like a huge hit for a department. And when you consider the fact that the alternative for the firefighters is to have to go through fertility treatment, which most of us would have to pay for out of pocket, it's a pretty simple solve to just give the body a little bit of time to heal. So that, in a nutshell, is how it affects male firefighters.
I mean, I want to give you a chance to talk about your Beltane organization, because it's a fantastic organization. I think, Amber, you mentioned that you've used some stuff off of there, and you just tell us what it's about and that organization actually does, because it's really, really commendable of you that you have this organization.
Thank you so much. And I can't tell you how amazing it is to hear that it's being used and that it's helpful, because I really just started it back when I realized that it was going to be hard for me to conceive with my husband, and I was going through IVF, and it was stressful and just really an emotional time and so expensive. And I just felt back in 2018, I think, I just felt like I was alone on this island and had nobody to talk to. And I figured that there must be other people out there feeling the same way. So I built the website to start collecting all the research and all the policies I could find that I thought were really commendable. It's so great to hear about some amazing ones on this podcast today that I want to definitely feature. And then really, like, the gist of the overview of what we do is we do offer grants for firefighters that need fertility treatment. They're super easy to come by. You just submit a form through the website, reach out, and all I need is proof of your fertility treatment and your career as a firefighter, and you get mailed a check. It's literally that simple. They're $500 a piece. So then, as I mentioned before, we also just consolidate as much research as possible so you have it all in one place and you don't have to go scouring the internet. And then we also, a big group of us in Washington State got together and wrote what we call the gold standard policy. And it's a bundle of, we've got it in layman's terms, we've got it in formal SOP language. We have a doctor note you can take when you become pregnant to say, hey, OB/GYN, I'm a pregnant firefighter. I'm a little different than your general population pregnant person. So if you could look at this information and help me make educated decisions, that would be great. So we have like a form to take to your doctor. And then, yeah, just a few more resources on the website in regards to reproductive health. So that's really what we do. And I also, we're kind of tied into the Women in Fire Mentor program. So if somebody's going through fertility issues or anything having to do with reproductive health, I'm just one of the people that you can reach out to and talk to about it. And hopefully I can help you navigate some tough times.
And that website, the links on the Women in Fire page, but let me give it to our listener. It's THEBELTANEGUILD.org. And it's also
the Beltane doc. Yep.
And it's also on the Women in Fire website as well. And they have some really good information on there. And also she mentioned how the grants are, and you can also donate to the cause on the website. So if any of our listeners has been touched by this conversation today, you're able to go on her site and donate to help with the grants that she provides.
We've had a lot of unions also donate this past year. So if you have a union that would like to consider us for a charitable donation, that would be amazing.
Awesome. And speaking like unions, what they can do is when they go to the bargaining table and say you're looking for some changes in your healthcare plan, there are, like, our healthcare plan, it partially covers IVF, infertility treatments. So there is just another way you can go to bat for not just the women, but the members of your department, making sure they can at least have covered resources. So even if it's a per percentage.
I love, I don't know if anyone else has this or if you do down in Berkeley, but Seattle Fire just changed their language. First, they just increased their fertility benefit from $10,000 to $20,000, but they also changed the language. So you don't have to have a diagnosis of infertility to use the benefit, which means for all the same-sex couples in the fire service, they don't get restricted from accessing that benefit like they did before. So I really love what Seattle's doing.
So Lisa, real quick, if we have some time, I just want to hit 2 points that Mia had brought up. She just mentioned same sex. And so the reason we wrote our parental leave the way we did, it includes same-sex couples, and it also includes adoption as well. And then on a different subject, and maybe this would be great for the mentorship program, but when somebody does become pregnant, that's its whole own other navigation area. And I just want to encourage people to maybe reach out and talk to someone who went through it, because I found not all doctors are created equal. Even if you take you take in a list of the things you do, you take in, and my department asks us that we do that we notify our doctor what we do when we have these conversations. And, like right away, some doctors will kind of shut everything down. And one doctor told me I couldn't lift more than 20 pounds. And then I had another doctor who has a very different perspective. And so I just would encourage people to do their research. If you don't get a good feeling or you're not happy, it's okay to get a second opinion, and maybe reach out to another female firefighter who's gone through this, to kind of help you get some of that stuff figured out. You don't have to take the first one you get.
And Mia did mention the Women in Fire. We do have a reproductive health mentor program that back in April at the FDIC and the Women in Fire Leadership Conference, we had training, the people that were interested in being mentors. We had a day training, and Mia was one of the trainers. So that's actually where I met her in a class the day before, but I met her at the training. So Erin, you just hit on it too, like reach out to somebody. So the Women in Fire webpage has the mentoring program where you could sign up to look for a mentor, and all the mentors have their bio and such on there.
Perfect.
So we're about out of time. So does anyone have anything else they would like to add?
Consider covered bereavement leave for miscarriages. That was one of the big things I wanted to add into one of the policies.
I
is
think
making sure those type of events are covered, with also the mental health resources needed.
Yeah, I think that through the Beltane Guild, your guys' gold standard policy actually includes that in there too, because that's something that we added into our policy. And I basically used like all of the resources on the Beltane Guild to build our department's policy. And that was one of the things that we had to have a discussion on, was at how many weeks is it appropriate for it to go from like sick leave into bereavement leave.
Thanks for adding that, Amber, because that is very important, because a lot of those state the relationship has to be able to receive that leave and such. And then you made a good point, the mental health after something like that.
And like Morgan mentioned, like what weeks are appropriate, and like personally speaking, I've had over the span of 10 years, I had 3 different types of miscarriages, and one being a ruptured ectopic with emergency surgery, those type of things that cause me infertility later down the line, which also trying to go through a process of freezing and maintaining my eggs, those kind of things. So those are the things I just picked up on, and just knowing that not all things are created equal, and they should deserve their own time sometimes. Thanks
for adding that. That's very important. I appreciate that. So I want to thank each of the guests for being a part of the radio show. I hope the information that they presented to you today will help departments realize the importance of having these policies in place before they're needed. Thank you to Fire Engineering again. Thanks to all the listeners and members of Women in Fire. And remember to follow Women in Fire on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and check out our website, which is womeninfire.org, and join us at our international conference in San Diego, September 11th through the 14th. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having
Like a trusted turnout jacket you've had for years, Flex 7 outer shell fabric delivers a perfectly broken-in feel on the very first wear. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of enforced technology, Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tenkatafabrics.com/flex7. Flex 7, powered by enforced technology. Only from Tenkata Protective Fabrics.
Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Over time, those toxins lead to cancer. Protect yourself with MagnaGrip, the easiest, most reliable exhaust removal system that features a true 100% seal to eliminate diesel exhaust fumes. To get free grant assistance, visit magnagrip.com